This presentation is about the 2006 Buick Lucerne, the alternator replacement. For beginners, you have to uninstall or unmount the front bumper, the grille, the condenser, and the radiator. And as you can see here, I'm showing just the front bumper, which would have been here, already removed. These 4 bolts on each side need to be removed. There's a few covers, plastic covers on top that need to be removed. So there's a few fasteners that are plastic that need to be taken off. You do not have to remove both headlights. If you want a little more light and ease, visibility is helpful if you do remove both headlights, especially the passenger side headlight. This one right here, you want to remove that one so you can have more access to the alternator once you get it to where you can remove it. You have to take out some fasteners on the wheel well to remove the bumper cover right here. Those are all plastic pull out fasteners. And uh, there's another view. There are fasteners down here for this plastic cover, undercover, that need to be removed. This undercover does not have to be removed, however, entirely. It only has to be removed from the front. The back could remain on the vehicle. This is a view of the right side of the headlight assembly removed. It's a bolt right here. These have to be removed, these 2 screws. I would recommend you leave the screws on the vehicles, or the bolts on the vehicles as much as you can. That way you don't lose them or forget which bolt goes where. Another view of the front passenger side. You have to remember to carefully disconnect the headlamps and take care not to damage any of the wiring, hoses, or tubing. Another view at the driver's side. Here you can see the fasteners removed. For the bumper to be removed, there's a bolt right here and a bolt that comes all the way off that would go around here. You kind of have to reach around the back for that one bolt that goes there, and with a number 10 millimeter wrench. Also, these small bolts are 10 millimeter, which is kind of odd because this is a domestic vehicle. Supposed to have everything in imperial or English tooling, but there's a lot of bolts that are metric for some reason. Another view at the top, driver's side. This bolt right here is for the headlamp. This right here is for the cover. This one here is also for the cover. Excuse me, that might be, yeah, those 2 here are for the headlamp. This, and there's a 4th one around here. They have to reach under with a 10 millimeter wrench and basically blindly reach around the back and undo that bolt to take the headlight off, the headlamp. That's a view of the front before the condenser is taken off. This bar right here needs to be removed, and that bar has this whole assembly for that locking mechanism for the hood. All it is a few 10mm bolts, about 4 or 5 of them, one here, and then about 3 of them down here underneath. Remove those. That's another view of that. Remove those bolts on top with a 10mm wrench or socket. That's another view of that. Another view of those 2 bolts holding that bar assembly. These tubing here, you are going to have to disconnect and plug as you remove the condenser. Okay, this is with the condenser removal. You have to undo a few bolts and take this tubing apart. Take the bolt out and the nut out from the bottom. Top bolt and the nut in the bottom. Then that bolt, then the bottom comes out, and these 2 tubes separate. Make sure you plug it if at all possible. That way you don't allow moisture to penetrate the condenser and the system, because moisture, as I've heard, will cause your AC system to malfunction or be damaged. You have to take these brackets off to remove the condenser and the radiator. This is the radiator. The condenser has already been removed at this point. Again, this bracket right here needs to be removed. This hose needs to be removed. This hose clamp needs to be pinched and removed. This is another view of those condenser lines or tubing already removed. You can see the condenser fluid, or the dye that they put in the system when they pressurize it. Some kind of oil and dye with it. That way you can spot a leak. This is obviously one here with the green dye. These bolts right here have to be removed. I put them back on, but they were removed to remove the condenser. That's another view of the radiator right before it's removed. Top view of the radiator. It could come out with the fan assembly from the right side. You can have the left side or the driver's side, it can remain connected and you can access the radiator. So that's showing the driver's side of the radiator, left side from a top view. You don't have to disconnect the fans or the hose on the driver's side. This hose right here could remain on the radiator, and you could just be pushed to the side. The radiator could be just pushed to the side, and it shows it here. This is the top view of the passenger side. Here you remove the radiator from this bracket right here where it sits on the middle. This goes here. The hose has been removed right here. This hose, and you can push it this way, out of the way. Once you push the radiator here out of the way, these are the two tubing that were removed. And as you can see here in the center of the screen, the the alternator is already visible. You may have to just push a few of the hoses and cables out of the way so you can access the alternator. There are a few connections on it. This view here shows two of them. The one with the positive cable, it has most likely a rubber gasket, rubber cover on it. You have to pull up to access the nut, remove that. This is the chassis ground cable that's attached to the alternator. You can remove that. I believe that is a 15mm wrench. This is a 13mm wrench. Again, metric size wrenches. Another view of those two connections. There's a connector right here with the cable. Make sure you carefully remove that. Right here there's a bolt that attaches the alternator to the engine frame. Remove that. I believe that is a 15 size bolt. The bolt again is that right down here. This is a label of the particular alternator. Another view of another bolt that needs to come off, this bolt right here. It attaches the alternator to the top of the alternator to the engine. Make sure you remove that bolt. The bottom bolt has a nut. This one is just a bolt that threads right to the frame. And here I'm showing the positive cable disconnected, the connector unplugged, and this right here, this bolt, which basically also not only holds the alternator to the engine, but it also holds the negative terminal to the alternator. It's already taken off, mostly off. Another view of that, you can see the negative terminal and the positive terminal here. To remove the alternator, you have to get a half-inch, a half-inch either ratchet or a half-inch extension, one of those extension drives, so you can connect to this tensioner right here to loosen up the belt that goes to the alternator. There's one belt that goes to all of the pulleys on the driver's side of the engine, on this side. It's another view of that. This is the tensioner right here. There's a a half-inch drive insert that you can use this wrench or shaft that you can turn it with. You turn it towards the front of the vehicle to loosen up, and it is spring loaded. It's another view of that, and you can see the belts here. Another view of the tensioner. Another view of the belts right here from a scene from the top of the engine. And right here I have already removed the belt from the alternator. Now the alternator is free to come out. You may have to work it out, pry it out somewhat. Here's it is shown with belt off. You can see the pulley there. I would recommend, if that belt is at all damaged or old or brittle or in any way needing to be changed, to just go ahead and change it when you're doing this. That way that is out of the way and done. With the work involved, it is worth changing that belt out if at all it's needed, because to access that belt you would have to basically do the same thing. If it ever needed to be changed again, you would have to remove the front bumper, all those covers, and the condenser, uh, and the front part there for the water and all of that, the radiator. And that is a view of the cavity where the alternator would go. It has already been removed. You can see the belts here and all of the pulleys and tensioners. There's one tensioner and one smooth pulley that doesn't move. That is the new alternator going in. Bottom view of it. Make sure you put all the connections as the old one had it. Make sure you note before you take the belt off what the routing of that belt is. Draw it out. Make sure you have the correct path of that belt on a manual or some kind of a drawing. If you're going to change the belts, even if you're not, make sure, because that belt may come off the pulleys as you remove the alternator. There's that old belt coming off. I did replace that belt for this particular case vehicle. And there's the new alternator with connections already made. Again, positive terminal, negative terminal, bolt here, and there's a bolt and nut to go on the bottom. Make sure the power connection, the electrical connection, goes on the bottom, and it's secure. And that is all of it. Thank you very much for watching.